Um, Good to see everyone. We're live from Las Vegas, unexpectedly. Uh, we just spent most of the afternoon at the pool, and I just went back and grabbed a quick shower. And yeah, we're in a little bit of a break mode. I didn't really bring a lot of money this trip, but we did lose some this morning. And we're kind of just waiting until this evening for dinner. So we'll see how things progress from there. Tonight we're going to Jean Georges Steakhouse, one of our favorites. Not my absolute favorite, but it is a very good one. And then tonight we're actually going to go see a show. We're going to go see Absinthe, which is a show that's been in Vegas for I don't know, maybe 8 years or more. But we've never actually been there. It's kind of supposed to be, it's a Dark Sun campaign, Dark Sun show. It's mature, 18 plus only. But I think it's kind of got some, maybe a little bit of nakedness or something like that, or maybe it's a little raunchy, maybe it's more like to say it. But it's over at Caesar's Palace, so never seen that show. Mostly we've just focused on like magicians and illusionists, performers, Cirque du Soleil, so we've never seen that one. So gonna go see that one. So what's up, everybody? What's up, Sin? What's up, Kit? So yeah, we're gonna walk around. We'll find a place to hang out for a little bit. And mostly, it was either this or take a nap. And I decided, screw it. Let's go live again. Everybody else went to lunch. I had a big breakfast, so I did not want to do lunch, especially as we are getting dinner at a steakhouse, and I'd like to actually be able to, eat my meal and enjoy it in full things. Yeah, it's not the Illusionator. Actually, my favorite magic act in Vegas right now is Matt Franco. 1T, Matt Franco. He has a residency over at the Link, so it's a really good show. I don't know how much he's changed it. I think the last time I saw it was before COVID, so I imagine the show has evolved or changed. But like, for example, there's also Shin Lim, who is here. I don't like that show. It's not a good show. Shin Lim is a close-up magician. He does a lot of, card deck manipulations. That doesn't really translate well, to the overall scene of a stage magician. So I think that for the most part, stick with Matt Franco. What's going on, everybody? Dave Boy's coming at you from 30K above Northern Cali. Where are you headed to, Dave Boy? You heading up to what, Seattle or something? Sin got invited to a 5.5 game. So did I. And I'm furiously trying to figure out how to play. Yeah. It's going to be really interesting when I go to this Dungeons and Cabins thing and I suddenly have to play 5.5 edition with one, just playing 5th edition, but two, with a bunch of people who I'm sure are obsessed with 5th edition. And number one, probably that's the only game they know. And number two, they know it way, way, way better than me. So fun little thing here. We're at the Aria. This is where I'm staying. But they changed this seasonally. This is a display over at the patisserie area. That's the gelato stand. Anyways, they change this a couple times a year. This whole entire display is made of chocolate or edible stuff. I don't know if it's all chocolate, but it is all edible. It's all made from edibles stuff. Mostly chocolate and candy. So here we have Spring in Bloom. Experience a springtime fantasy sculpted entirely from chocolate, fondant, and sugar. 2,250 pounds of dark chocolate with 150 feet of sugar vines. There you go. It's a great question, Jake. What are we even doing here? No, it's not that they're scary folks. It's just, it's not an audience. It's not a game that I'm like, okay, I've played 5th edition. I've played 5th edition. I've run 5th edition. But every time I've played or run 5th edition, we took it pretty fast and loose. The last time I ran 5th edition, it became Dungeon Time Extreme, right? Very famously, I ran. That's actually how the channel started. I ran 5th edition for Bob and a couple of his friends. Now, some of those friends ended up being part of our show initially, but some of them did not. And I ran them through Sunless Citadel. And they like in Sunless Citadel, they got a greater arrow of slaying from the shopkeeper in Oakhurst, which is the town next to the Sunless Citadel, and they got it for like 100 gold or something like that, 50 gold or something. So needless to say, I play pretty fast and loose with the game rules. Now, I promise you, this actually was not intended. See, I'm tempted to take you guys back out over to the pool, but I've already been to the pool, and also it's really hot in Las Vegas, like 108 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, was that 45 or something degrees Celsius? Something like that, 43 degrees Celsius. Pretty hot. Maybe it's 50 degrees Celsius or 49 degrees Celsius. Anyways, and it's not too bad in the morning or even through noon, but as it starts getting into the afternoon and reaches peak intensity, it's pretty dang hot. Anyways, the reason I'm saying this is funny is because I didn't mean for this to happen, but I actually think I'm gonna go get another venti cold brew from Starbucks, which was what we did yesterday. So we're going to do that again. 42-ish, yes. My rule of thumb, I know it's actually 9/5 plus 32, but you can just double it and add 30. And for most normal human temperatures, that works out pretty well. Hi. Can I have a venti vanilla sweet cream cold brew with light ice? Thank you. No. Derek. Thank you. No receipt. Thank you. Anyways, we're back. We're running it back the same thing. Rocking my Origin shirt today. Got to represent the nerds in Vegas. Shocking, no one recognized it. But yeah. Jake asks, Derek, what game should I run for my new Monday group? Great question. Well, Jake, what kind of games do you like? And what kind of games do you enjoy to run? I mean, if you can't enjoy the game that you're running, then what is the point? Yes, this is Derek's daily update where he orders and then drinks Starbucks. And we hang out with the crew until my phone starts to die. Anyways. All right. So yeah, I think a lot of GMs actually do their groups a big disservice because they'll say things like, I'm going to run this game because that's what my group wants me to run. And I think, the GM has to be engaged. I mean, everyone should be engaged. Obviously, the players should be engaged. But, a campaign can live through a player being a little less engaged. But if a GM's not interested, and involved, it's gonna be a bust, right? Ooh, okay, so Jake is trying to decide between Blades, Daggerheart, and Fabula Ultima. Well, those are very different games. Well, Jake, I would say you should run Fabula Ultima because I hear that a noted and famous YouTuber is going to be potentially working on a bestiary. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good list, obviously. I mean, but Daggerheart is obviously the most trad of all of those. And I would say Fabula Ultima really relies on you having I think a group that really enjoys those JRPG. It's not a TTRPG, right? It's a TTJRPG. Also, I would say that of the three of them, Fabula Ultima actually has the most independent, indie narrative components to it, because Fabula points are extremely powerful for collaborative world builder. Like, again, Daggerheart talks about collaborative world building, and it talks about collaborative efforts, like using a GM move to say, ask the players or whatever, and that's good. Again, but remember, Daggerheart is a happy medium. It's an in between space between what I would call a real, truly collab, almost GM-less game, and a more traditional game. And that's not to say that Daggerheart doesn't encourage the GM to involve the players in the decision-making process, but Fabula Ultima, literally has rules, explicit meta currency. In fact, the players are oftentimes encouraged to spend their Fabula points to change the story. And a lot of people find that either overwhelming, or they find it distasteful, because it's very narrative, right? It's about creating cool moments and creating cool stories. Hey, Edward, thank you so much for the tip. I'm sorry, obviously we're being live, so if you said something, I can't see it. I'm sorry. Ooh. Oh no. Can I not get the foam? Can I just get the cream? Yeah, thank you. Sorry. It's a classic mistake. Anyways, see, look how nice it is that I can just leave with my microphone instead of being tied to the phone. I can keep talking to you even as I walk away. Edward says, no worries, here's what I said. After a long break, our KOLC Stonetop game is returning Sunday. Here's some money because I've missed a bunch of streams. Stone Month will return. Oh, it will. I mean, everything has been on hold until I at least finish book one. And we're very close. We're very close. I think we made it through Dangerous and Discovery, so I think next is just maybe Love Letter. And I think we did the Bestiary 2. That was the Dangerous chapter. Thank you. And so, yeah, all we have left really, I think, is Love Letters and maybe, I don't know what else is left. Not much. And then we're going to do book 2, but that's more of like a walkthrough, not like a deep dive into it. But I appreciate you, Edward. That's great that the Stonetop game is returning. It's a very cool game with some really cool moves. Again, I've run a lot of Dungeon World in my day. It's easily the PBTA game I've run the most. And, Daggerheart Stonetop is really a refined version of that, making those moves and rules a little bit more. You can see that someone has had a lot of experience with that and has sort of smoothed over those rough edges as well. Now, Koktra says it's very hard for them to find engaged players for popular games. It's easier to find players for UA, Unknown Armies, than for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Well, that is generally not the case, especially if you go online, Koktra. Maybe in person, but... Cybersmith hopes I have proficiency in gambling lore. I do, but I've been rolling like crap. Self-confessed cynic says, the first thing I would house rule out of Fabula Ultima. And again, it really just determines what is, and again, I've said that there are games out there that sort of sometimes have these little bit of identity crises where the game isn't always quite sure what it wants to be, because it kind of wants to have the best of both worlds. And I understand that. I mean, it's one of my design hang-ups, is the strong desire. I think every designer has this problem, or every wannabe designer has this problem, where you go, man, I really love X, Y, and Z from these various games. My perfect game would just have all of those games shoved into each other. And that's why I call that the Frankenstein game. And that's what I see, quite frankly, it's what I see a lot of people doing, even in my own server, where they just jam in rules from other games that they like. And and again, you might like Tuna Fish and you might like peanut butter, and they might both be perfectly good on a sandwich, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they belong together. And it's a problem because there's a strong desire to be like, realistically, I'm only gonna be able to play maybe one game at a time. So I want to have all of these, I want to have all these mechanics or ideas or things that I enjoy in one game. And so there's a desire to just jam everything in there. And so, yeah, it's not, it's not good. Basically, is what it comes down to. All right, we're gonna go over to where we were yesterday. Ugh. There's this. Edward says, "Cough, cough, Beowulf." I mean, Beowulf is very vocal about this and is very unapologetic about it. But there are others. There are definitely others. Oh, we went the wrong way. Jake says, "I love my Franken game." Right. Whereas, so for me, and this is like, this is all about like the idea of integration amongst subsystems, which is something that I take extreme, I guess the word is obsession with, but care for, enjoyment out of, right? I don't like it when games include systems or subsystems that do not really integrate well across the broader game and with each other. And I think the beauty of a well-designed game is a game that integrates vertically and horizontally so that mechanical expressions show up in patterns throughout the system, and that what happens in one part of the game isn't, unique or stuck in that one part of the game. Rather, it completely fills in the whole ecosystem of that game. There's a lot of good examples of that, but like recently, one that I've talked about, one that I'm playing, right? I've been running the One Ring, and one of the things I like about the One Ring is the mirror of how your characters in Encumbrance, which in that game is called Load, and the what is it called? Encumbrance, which is called Load, and your Fatigue work basically the same way as your character's acquisition of shadows and soul scars, because it's a similar concept. It uses a similar math. It uses a similar kind of framework, but it's expressing two different ideas. So instead of having two different systems, it has two similar systems. Blades is very good about this as well, Jake. It expresses that. Now, of course, the downside of that is you have to you have to work hard. So like Magic is also usually really, really good at this, where when they will do a set, well, they don't always succeed, of course they try, but they'll do a set and they'll give black green a theme, and then they'll give like green white a theme, mechanically theme, right? So they give green white a theme and they give green black a theme. And so like the question is like, how do you make a green card that has an independent mechanic that can help integrate with both green white and with green black? And how do you do that in a way that makes it so that, and that, like, for example, this is one of the things that I was challenged with when I was talking about Nightheart, is like, how do I create classes and domains that have a similar overlap? In fact, it's very much like a Magic the Gathering problem, right? Where I want a class to be the glue between two domains to showcase how you can interact with those two domains' unique mechanics in a way that feels integrated and whole. Anyways, But yes. Daggerheart, house rule out all flying. Flying is my GM kryptonite. What's wrong with flying? Nine times out of 10, flying is only a real problem if you're like running a dungeon game with pits. Doesn't really matter too much. But anyways, the point is, what do you want out of a role-playing game, right? If you think role-playing games are about creating stories, and you want a game that helps facilitate that, then you want Fabula Ultima, because that's what that whole system is designed to do. It's not only does it designed to create stories, it's designed to create a specific kind of story, a JRPG story, and to give the players authorial state to do that. Stan is not interested in playing ManTG or its lore, but Color Pie is so fascinating both mechanically and philosophically. Yes, I mean, again, I said it before, I'll say it again. I think Magic the Gathering is the single greatest game from a design standpoint, from a philosophy standpoint. I mean, of any game ever. For sure. Again, so William, you say Daggerheart at least kills Dark Vision. Everything has Dark Vision as my kryptonite. Again, in a dungeon-based game, but how many people really are running dungeon-based games these days? I mean, it's funny that people will complain about Dark Vision, but then they just typically just hand wave light sources. I mean, we live in a world where nine of the 10 classes usually get access to some sort of cantrip or something that is free, essentially, that gives them infinite light infinitely. So, to a certain extent, I don't think it really matters. Dark Vision was, I think, more of a problem in 3rd edition, because in 3rd edition, in theory, you are still sort of locked into that more dungeon exploring concept, right, where light and resources and stuff mattered, Aeropressor, have you talked about the Crow's crowfunder? Can we expect a first look? Aeropressor, we did a Crow's first look. I mean, of what we had, right? The quick start. I mean, there was not a lot of information. So, Aeropressor, if you go and look on our channel, we did a Crow's, alpha reversion. I don't remember exactly what they released, but we already did take a look at that. So, yep, it's all right. Is this a Stone Stop stream? It could be. It could be a Stone Stop stream. You know what's really weird? I'll tell you something. Maybe it's because I'm in Vegas. I've been relaxing, taking naps and all that other stuff. But I got to be honest with you. Maybe it's just the natural. I like to be sort of, I like to go against the grain. I like to be someone outside of normality. But I'm kind of almost like, I feel like I want to run. I feel like I want to run a Vampire 6th edition game just because everyone else is all up in arms about it. Actually, let me rephrase that. Vampire 6th edition and Dark Sun 5.5. That's like, I'm such a contrarian, like that's just like where I'm at. Run Vampire the Masquerade in Dark. No. Stick to the core tenets, Stick to the core tenets. Right, exactly, Vin. Just because someone can fly doesn't necessarily mean that everything becomes trivial. I mean, what do you do when the group gets to 5th level and they get access to the spell Fly, or 3rd? I mean, I'm thinking traditional D&D here. When the characters get to 3rd level and they get access to Levitate. Now, yes, Levitate is not the same as Fly, but for most purposes that you would probably break the game with Fly for, Levitate 9 times out of 10 solves most of those same issues. And these have always been things in D&D. Again, I cannot stress this enough. It's one of the fundamental problems with Pathfinder 2, big time. With Pathfinder 2. It's one of the big fundamental problems with a lot of modern day high-level D&D, which was D&D was designed for your characters to level up. It was supposed to be difficult, right? You know what, actually, let me take this back. D&D presented challenges, and leveling up was not guaranteed, right? Nor was it easy. And as a reward for getting higher level, your character got to basically ignore those challenges. And they didn't get replaced with new ones. You just got to ignore those challenges. Now, that was your reward for doing better. But that was because the hard part of the game was leveling up. And now it's just a given that your character is going to level up automatically. But now, because you level up automatically, more or less, and it's a given, even if your character dies, it's like, oh, make a new character. What level are you? 8. Well, everyone's 8th level, so you'll be 8th level, right? So there's like no, I hate to say it, but there's like no sense of reward for it. There's no sense of like accomplishment. And so, unfortunately, by doing that, though, what the game systems and GMs have done is then basically make all of the rewards that you get for leveling up pointless. Okay, so real Neutromancer, let's break that down. Your reward for leveling up was mostly 3 to 4 hit points. That's correct. All right, if we're talking about like AD&D first edition, right? Fighters got D10, clerics got D8. Maybe if you had a good constitution, you might get +1 hit points. So we're talking about 4 or 5 hit points. But let's actually break that down deeper, Neutromancer, because if you go into the monster manual, what you will see is that the monster's damage doesn't really scale that much. Creatures don't like at the end game. Now, yes, obviously hit points are lower in AD&D first edition than they are in other editions of the game. But it's not like suddenly monsters are doing 30 or 40 hit points of damage, right? Monsters might be still doing, 5 to 8 points of damage. So when you gain a level and you gain an extra hit dice of hit points, by the time you've gained a couple of different levels and your fighter has, say, 40 hit points or 45 hit points, it's not like everything's doing 10 or 15 or 20 now. Most things are still doing, hell, your character is still probably doing, 5 or 6 or 7 points of damage. So you're able to take dozens of hits, your character quite literally becomes like a kind of a god. And not only that, right, saving throws, there's no DCs. So saving throws are plot armor because saving throws, are independently tested. Right? The only thing that you're rolling against is your number. They do not get modified or changed. In other words, the fireball from Shazas Tam, right, Grand Archlich of Thay, is the same difficulty for your character to make a saving throw against as a fireball from a newly minted 5th level wizard. The DC, if you will, is based on your character level. And as you get higher level, all of your saving throws just get easier and easier and easier and easier, to the point where when your character is around 10th level, certainly into the teens, a lot of your saving throws are single digit. Your character is going to pass 70%, 80%, 90% of all saving throws that they are asked to make. Your character essentially gains a sort of form of immunity to saving throw effects. Oh, they had instant death spells in first edition. Instant death spells weren't that scary. They were scary at low level, but that was a challenge to be overcome. Right? You had to play smart. You had to be clever when you fought a basilisk or a Medusa or a cockatrice. But by the time your character was like 12th or 13th or 14th level, like your fighter could just go up and make out with the Medusa because their saving throw versus petrification was really good. You weren't literally immune, but you get my point. It was third edition. It was third edition D&D that fucked everything up. And I love 3rd edition D&D, but 3rd edition D&D fucked everything up because it kept those instant death spells in the game. It kept, Slay Living, it kept Disintegrate, it kept all that stuff. But it also introduced this DC system. It introduced, spell focus and greater spell focus. And it introduced the fact that your int scaled, and it was your primary attribute, and your level scaled, and a character's fort save or will save did not scale at the same level that the DC scaled. So it was entirely possible for a character to be 8th or 9th or 10th or 11th level, and they might have a will save that was +6. And the DC to avoid the evil wizards dominate person spell might be DC 30. And so suddenly you're like, okay, well, you need to roll a 20. So that's, that's actually, Stan, it wasn't gamists, Stan. That was, I think, an attempt at over-simulation. I think it was actually a simulationist problem. I think simulationism ruined D&D. Because it makes sense, right? Simulationist says that a 20th level wizard with a 35 intelligence score, with all of these feats into spell focus, it would be harder. It would be harder to avoid the effects of their dominate person than from a very low level wizard with a moderate intelligence. So, right, it makes sense. That's the way it would work in real life, right? That's the simulationist mindset. Whereas original D&D, in some ways, actually, was less simulationist. In fact, I've said on this channel before, and I'll stand by it, I think 3rd edition D&D is the highest simulationist version of D&D. Hands down. A lot of people, again, lesser minds, lesser talking heads on the internet in Dungeon Tomb land might say that it was AD&D. They'll talk about AD&D 1st edition as if it was the great simulationist edition. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. Agile says, "What are you really doing out there, Derek?" Nothing. I mean, again, like I said, my buddy is a platinum level member of MGM. He gets free comped rooms a couple times a year, and when he does, and it aligns with my schedule, I get to basically come out to Vegas for more or less for free. And of course, I used to bring a wallet full of hundreds and get to gamble a lot. Now I mostly just come for the vibes and for the atmosphere and a couple good meals. I'll spend a little bit of money, but again, I don't have a lot of money to spend, so. Always. Again, Agile Monk, I don't view Vegas as an unsafe town at all, actually. Well, no, that's exactly the point, Real Nutrimancer. I think if you go into AD&D, if you know AD&D well, you'll realize that game, compared to 3rd edition, there aren't rules for hardly anything. There aren't rules for 3rd edition. I mean, 3rd edition D&D, it's like, my God. I mean, for starters, Dave Boy is 100% correct. 3rd edition, maybe people don't know this, but like in 3rd edition, you leveled up monsters with hit dice, the way that you would level up a character level with hit dice. And every 3 hit dice, they got a feat, just like a player could add. They got skill points that needed to be assigned. And also what people don't realize is that every demi-human in the book, okay, orc, gnoll, goblin, hobgoblin, bugbear, was actually a race with a built-in class, which usually was the warrior class. 3rd edition had a separate tier of what was called NPC classes, right? They were warrior, expert, adept, aristocrat, and commoner, and they were in the DMG. So the first level, the orc in 3rd edition isn't actually an orc. It is actually a level 1 orc warrior. So, yeah, there's the monsters were basically characters. Every monster was basically a PC, and it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. But Vin says, despite the problems, the simulationist lover in me leads me to not hate it, and that's okay. You could be an apologist. I mean, I love it too, obviously. From a time and a place where that's what I wanted out of my D&D experience. So they are not player rules. They're definitely not player rules, but they are a separate set of rules that are as complicated. Yeah, that's actually correct. Yeah. And that was the whole premise behind a book that came out for 3rd edition called Savage Species. Savage Species was basically sort of ripping out the DNA of the monster manual and allowing all of those different monstrous races to be basically played as character races. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rifts is a classic example of that, Joe, right? Very classic, uber simulationist, everything works the same. There's like the one truth, and we all sort of stick to it. Whereas monsters in D&D, or AD&D, I should say, worked obviously differently than players did. I mean, not incredibly differently, not freakishly difficult, but yeah. Anyways, so AD&D characters had this sense of plot armor. Saving throws did not work on a scheme of simulationism. They worked on a form of I would say, both gamist and narrativist, which is that high-level characters were just not likely to get taken out by instant death spells or get turned to stone or whatever, because their saving throws are really good. Even if the thing that was casting the spell was a really, really high level character, it didn't matter because there was no such thing as a DC. I mean, put to another way, right? AD&D did not have any skill checks. So if a character needed to test their ability in AD&D, you made what was called an ability score check. And to make an ability score check, you rolled a d20, unmodified, just a d20, and it had to be equal to or lower than your character's ability score. So if your character's strength was 16 and, there was a big heavy boulder in your way, and the player said, I'm going to move the heavy boulder, and the GM says, okay, make a strength check. And that meant roll d20, and if you get a strength, or you get a value on your d20, unmodified, equal to or lower than your strength score, you move the big boulder. Note, there was no DC, right? So there was no way structurally, mechanically. Now, I'm sure there were a lot of house rules. I'm sure people did come up with stuff, and that's kind of what obviously led into the genesis of both second edition, but also obviously third edition. But there was no way to model, technically, how hard the boulder was to move. Gus, it's exactly like Dragonbane. It's exactly like Dragonbane. Yeah, it's a roll under system, and it's exactly like Dragonbane, Gus. And of course, we did not have the tech yet of advantage or disadvantage. You would have thought that someone would have come up with this, but I'll be completely honest with you. I played AD&D for a very long time. I played third edition for a very long time, and I don't think I ever saw anyone ever in a Dragon Magazine article, online, anywhere, ever really talk about this idea of 2d20 take low, 2d20 take high. So that was legitimately new tech in 4th edition D&D, not 5th edition. 5th edition did not create advantage. That didn't go on. Scotty, no, okay, Ben Bars lift gates, totally reasonable. But that was only for strength, Any of the other ability scores, they didn't have a Ben Bars lift gates. So that's another reason why. That's another reason why I think the OSR gets some things wrong because they don't understand that, like, well, okay, we'll get to this in a couple of things. There's a couple of different interesting things, which is the one of the things I think the OSR gets wrong is this idea that the GMs were just, they're like, yeah, old school D&D was great, didn't have skill systems, and you didn't have all these ability score checks or whatever. You just, the GM just made a call. Again, my anecdotes are my anecdotes. I grew up playing AD&D. I played with several different groups. I ran games myself. I played, again, in several different groups with several different groups of people. I played at conventions, at local shops, and of course, I was, subscriber to Dragon Magazine and on the early internet. People were making ability score checks all the time, like all the time. Part of the reason that third edition got created the way it did is because people were already like, I'll give you a great example. Secret doors. Okay, so let me just give you a perfect example of what I consider to be yeah, correct, Scotty. They're remembering 1974 D&D that they never played. But let me give you a great example of this. Secret doors. Secret doors is like a perfect example of this. You will see people who really love and espouse the OSR, and they will talk about how much more they love the OSR because the player, right, needs to get engaged, and you can't just say, I make a perception check, and I find the secret door. Except AD&D quite literally had rules for finding secret doors. It was, you rolled a d6, and on a roll of a 1, you found the secret door. And maybe like elves or something found it on a roll of a 1 or a 2. Yeah. And like thieves had, as they got higher levels, they could find it on a roll of a 1 or a 2, and then eventually like a 1, 2, or a 3. And I think eventually thieves could find it on a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So like AD&D quite literally had rules for finding secret doors. So like this there's like this, it's like what's the word that like people use all the time? This like it's like this imaginary past that they remember but didn't ever actually exist. That never was a thing. So people were calling, so Joe says people were house ruling skill systems for AD&D back in the 70s. That's how Palladium came to be. And it's the same reason why in second edition AD&D, you got non-weapon proficiencies, and then that evolved into the skill system that we got in third edition. It's because even from the very beginning of the game, GMs were calling for charisma. It'd be like, people would be like, I love OSR. There's no diplomacy. You have to talk. You have to talk to the NPC, and you have to, role play, and that's how you. No, you know what used to happen all the time? Make a charisma check. I heard that all the time. Make a charisma check. See how again, the game literally had reaction rolls in it to initially determine how much they liked it, and then you made a reaction roll, which was modified by your charisma. So, again, I mean, that's fine. That's fine if you want to, create this narrative for a world that didn't exist, but that's not the way it was. Anyways, and again, it could be fun. You could have fun with that, but yeah. Fortune effects. Vince says fortune effects with a 2d20 d20. I didn't think that was third edition so much. I do think that was more of a Pathfinder 1 thing. Dr. Metropolis says high-level AD&D is very gamey. Fighter, you are now level 9. You have gained a keep. One appears. Here are your retainers. They just show up because you're awesome. Right. The game dictated that you got to keep, and then it was up to you to decide how you got it, where it came from, what are you going to do with it. That was the point of the game. So I agreed. Gus has joined the RPG hobby fairly recently and have never lived a life before Advantage or Disadvantage. I'm not going to lie. Again, whether you can say it really came out with fortune effects, misfortune effects from PF1. It was in 4th edition. To be fair, PF1 and 4th edition basically came out at the same time. And then obviously 5th edition codified it as Advantage or Disadvantage. I think it's a great system. I think it's a great mechanic, so I don't think it's a terrible thing. So Dave Boy was talking about, I feel like there was a lift bars, bend backs with absolute listless. Here's the thing. Classic. Why is Ben Bars lift gates in the game? Well, I'll tell you why. It's a gamist reason. Because number one, it's a dungeon-based game, and one of the go-to traps, gotchas. It's the same reason why find remove traps, climb walls is in the game, because it was the assumption that you were going to have to be climbing walls out of pits and all this other stuff. Portcullises were a big thing for both dungeons and castles, and portcullises were everywhere in original D&D. And if a portcullis fell, how are you going to deal with it? It was no longer a trap; you had to deal with it. So the idea was that the fighters could be strong enough to lift it. So that's why there was a game mechanic for it. But what most people don't realize is the reason why it was bend bars / lift gates is because that way it was essentially a push your luck mechanic. It gave you 2 shots, okay, to bend bars and lift gates. Because if you failed, you couldn't repeat checks in AD&D, like on a trap or any of the mechanics in the game. You couldn't retreat it. So if let's say you're traveling through the adventure and suddenly there's a trap, and the front half of the party is separated from the back half of the party as a portcullis slams down between the 2 halves of the party. Doors fling open before and behind you, and shambling dead come crawling out. Your rogue and your fighter are trapped ahead of the portcullis. Your cleric and your wizard are trapped on the other side of the portcullis. And oh my God, what are you going to do? So the fighter runs over and he says, I'm going to lift gates. And that meant grabbing the portcullis and lifting it up, Conan style. If you failed that check, you could no longer lift that gate until you gained a level. But if you failed that check, that did not preclude you from then bending the bars of said portcullis. So it basically gave you 2 chances to deal with a portcullis. That way, statistically, you were very unlikely to ever actually be completely fucked by the portcullis. So again, a whole ecosystem of a game predicated upon one central truth, that you're in a dungeon. Let's see here. Hey, what's up, SND Kings? Need King, Snide King. Hey, everyone, I'm sick of running 5e D&D, but I have a session with a new group next week that will be expecting the flavor of fantasy. Got any recommendations for a PBTA-loving GM to introduce them to that style? Well, I mean, there's Dungeon World. Obviously, there's Dungeon World 2 in beta, but that's a very different type of style. I mean, the problem is, what does 5e D&D even mean nowadays? I mean, you could try Daggerheart. It's got PBTA-like mannerisms. You could try Stonetop, although that is a bit of a different set of circumstances. It's not quite the same, but you could also try 13th Age. I think 13th Age, for me, is still the ideal, even more so than Daggerheart. I think 13th Age is the ideal baby's first introduction to a more narrative-ish RPG, while still being fairly trad. So I really like 13th Age for that. I mean, Gus, yeah, I mean, back then, everything used different things. Thieves used percentage systems. Clerics turning checks were a 2d6 roll. Ability checks were 2d20 roll low. I like Vin's suggestion. You could fuck PBTA and just run Nimble. It's not a bad suggestion either. Nimble's great. Big fan of Nimble here at this channel. I mean, you're not going to get any of those narrative elements. You're not really going to get any of those PBTA elements. But I do think it's a pretty good set of circumstances. Heroic Deeds, also very, very good. But I like those things as well. Oh, you're already running Stonetop. Yeah, 13th Age I think is a really good stepping stone. I know GM Scott from our Discord, one of our top supporting patrons, he ran that as sort of his group's introduction to other ideas, and it was very successful with them. But yeah, I mean, Heroic Deeds 5e, Nimble, or you could just run Heroic Deeds straight up. I think the D12 version is better myself. But so yeah, I don't know. Maybe you'll find this channel running some 5e D&D. Who knows? Some Dark Sun. We'll see how they do with it. It's interesting. I mean, I'll freely admit that I think the premise of the world is very cool, and I enjoyed it in 4th edition. And again, I didn't really play it in AD&D. I mean, I had like one of the books, but. Oh, goodness. Of course, I have to run a Daggerheart game and an Avatar game and a Blaze in the Dark game for my patrons. So I was supposed to run all of them, concurrently. Turns out that was a harder task than I expected with my schedule. So, and scheduling 20 different people for schedules to align was a bit too much. Yeah. I'm a little, this is just a completely tangented system or tangented point. But I'm a little hesitant, I will admit, going forward. I love being able to run games for my patrons, and honestly, the handful of games that I've run, and by games I mean like, campaigns, mini campaigns, 10 sessions or whatever, have been amazing. Right? I ran 2 Torchbearer campaigns last year. They were both great, very different, and it was fun. It was really great. But we had, with the one group, we had a lot of people come and go. Which is fair, which is fine. I get it. The game's not for everyone, scheduling or whatever. And it took us a lot longer to run through the one campaign than I wanted to. And then even the one campaign where nobody ever dropped out of the campaign, we never really finished the final session. Right? They battled their way through the dungeon. They acquired the dragon bone dagger, and they never actually did go fight the dragon sorcerer. So that was a little disappointing, and part of the reason was because of schedules, and then time got away from us. And the actual plays, Stan, were even a better example. So in that situation, Stan, I was paying people to play RPGs with me, and people couldn't make it. And so and even now with me trying to run these campaigns, I obviously have a very busy schedule. It changes. I have unexpected things that crop up, but also too, I'm traveling a lot, and it's a little bit different when you're dealing with people who are all over the world, and all over the globe, and obviously there's people have different levels of investment and stuff like that. So I've really loved the One Ring, and I've loved the 2 Torchbearer campaigns, but it is a pain in the butt to get these things scheduled. And when I originally set up the schedule, a bunch of people were like, "Yeah, I can make it, I can make it, I can make it." And I'll take a step back, and I'll say that I feel a certain amount of indebtedness because in most cases, these campaigns are people. These are patrons. These are people who support me. In many cases, these are people who support me and they have gold tickets, or they they won a raffle, and they get to be in the campaign. And I want them to get to be in the campaign. And the campaign is so I'm going to get to that, Marksum. And the campaign might only be 6 sessions long. All right. And if that person who's supporting me and paying with their tickets, or they want a raffle, if they're going to miss 2 of the 6 sessions, I feel like that's really shitty. So I don't think that that's very fair. So then you start playing the scheduling game, and then it becomes like herding cats. And so what happened this summer is I had like a short period of time where I thought I was going to be able to run all these games, and then if you remember, I got laryngitis and I got delayed, and then it ended up taking a lot more of my time to prep for NightCon than I thought. So I ended up having to like push things back. And then before you knew it, it was NightCon, and then Origins and NightCon, and then it was Gen Con, and then now I'm in Vegas, and then I'm going to be going to LA, and then potentially I'm going to Gamehole Con, and then PAX Unplugged, and maybe going to Lucca in Italy. And so it's just like, it's really difficult to schedule with people. And when you start talking about campaign, especially too, because I'm trying to make things work for people, it's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to play every other week. Well, now, if you miss a session, now suddenly you're only playing once a month. Anyways, it just can quickly get out of control. So Marksum suggested do shorter, 2 to 3 sessions, or even one-shots. Well, Marksum, I hate one-shots. And the other thing, Marksum, is, you take a game like Torchbearer. The people who wrote Torchbearer even say, basically, don't bother playing this game as a one-shot. They're like, I don't think that a 2-shot or a 3-shot does justice to a game. I just don't think it does. For me, the experience, because again, I understand other people are different than me. I know that. But part of my reason for wanting to play these games with people, and one of the reasons I would expect people want to play these games with me, is to explore the mechanical play cycle. Well, Joe, once we're at 4 shots, we're basically now we're talking about trying to organize 4 or 5 or 6 sessions. It just, I like there to be a sense of scale and progression. And even I'll be completely honest with you, 10 sessions for like the One Ring doesn't feel like enough. We've just finished up session 7. All right, and the campaign was sold as a 10-session campaign. That's what people bought in for. And I'm like, man, I'd love to see another year of this. I'd love to see another 10 sessions. But it's just not realistic. And of course, I have a big Patreon, and I want to be able to play at games with a lot of different people. So, 13th Age. I've run 3 campaigns of 13th Age, and all of them were the 10-session campaign model. I've never run a 13th Age session or 13th Age campaign that was, in fact, I would argue this. If I ever played 13th Age, it would always be the 10-session or 20-session model, right, where you either level up after every session, or you do like the partial level up rule after every session, and then every other session you get the full level. Well, the difference is, Real Nutrimancer, these people aren't employees. The people who are playing in the One Ring and the Torchbearer, they're patrons. They're actually, they don't pay me directly. In other words, I don't have a cost associated with it, but my campaigns cost tickets. And by the way, so to understand the distinction of it, when I run a campaign, like say for the One Ring, I said, okay, there's going to be 5 slots available for players. If you are a top-tier supporter of the Knight's Last Call, you will get gold tickets. And I will open up the campaign to gold tickets. And some of these people pay a lot of money, but they pay that money regardless, whether they're using them or not. They're not paying for the campaign, but they do get they kind of get the first right of refusal. But here's the difference. It's not like, oh, it's $500. If only 2 of those 5 seats fill, then the remaining seats go to the next, to the open raffle. And suddenly you might have somebody who basically is basically equivalently paying, $50 to be in those same games. So you have some people who are paying $500 to be in that game, and you have other people who are paying $50 to be in that game. Because yes, like I want to give people who support this channel at a high dollar amount, I want to give them, a little bit of nod of respect. But my real goal is just to fill the seats, and I want to get people playing. And yeah, you're like, Derek, but if you restricted it and you made it a strict cost, then you would encourage people to pay you more money. Probably, but I don't care about that as much. For me, the fact that people get to play with me is the most important part. And yeah, like I'm kowtowing to capitalism by saying I'm giving people who are, gold ticket or whatever, a high watermark. But to give a great example of this, we had a high dollar patron who gave what is equivalent to like $400 or $500 worth of tickets to another person who they don't even really know, so that they could be in the campaign with them. So again, it's a very community focused thing. It's not optimized for making money. And self-confessed says, meanwhile, we're playing Daggerheart. We're 8 sessions in, and they're currently level 3. And maybe they'll see level 4. Probably looking to do a level every 4 to 8 sessions. Oh my god, I can't do it. I can't do it. 3 is my limit. 3 is my limit. I will say that is partially solved beautifully by games like Forbidden Lands, where you just earn experience every session, and it's up to the player how they want to spend it. And if a player wants to, if the player gets 4 or 5 experience for that session and they want to spend that 4 or 5 experience to tick up a skill a rank, they could do that. If the player wants to save up because they want a new, more expensive ability or something really special and sexy, they could save up for several sessions. And they might not get anything advancement-wise for a number of sessions, but that's their choice. I really like that. That's... So Gus, that's why I love systems like Forbidden Lands, where you get XP and then you buy your stuff with your XP. Legend of the Five Rings does the same thing, and usually it's some sort of diminishing return, where it's like, to get rank 1 in a skill is 4 points, to get rank 2 is 8 points, to get rank 3 is 12 points, right? Total, like not total, but like 8 more, 12 more. So it tends to encourage or discourage, I would also say, people, really, really stacking, Yeah, also too, Vin, right, I just live in a time and a place where, a 50 to 1, I don't know if I have enough time left in my lifetime to play a 100 session campaign. I'm meaning that, seriously. I think there's a higher chance that, some of my players will be dead and or get Alzheimer's before we finish a 100 session campaign. But I understand. I do think that there is something to be said about, campaigns where you level up so quickly that you don't get to really explore the space, because you're not wrong. So I'll actually say that, Vin. I don't think you're wrong. I think it comes down to like what you get and how do you get to use it. It's similar to my rule of 3 for monsters, right? I want players to have to fight a monster 3 times. Because then they get to, experience that monster in 3 different ways. Ideally, I kind of feel that way about leveling. 2 is personal. Honestly, if there was a way to do it, 2.5 is my perfect. So, I like the idea of experiencing a level, for 3 sessions. You get to experience it like, oh, it's brand new, everything is shiny and new. The second session, you're like, okay, I know how all my abilities work. I'm not a noob anymore. I've had an entire session of experience with them, and I'm getting a sense for where they went. And the third, you feel like, okay, maybe in number 1, I'm getting a little bored with them. I've achieved mastery of this new ability. I've gotten to use this ability a number of times, and then we can get a new one. Now, there is a important note for that, which is the way I run my games. And if you've seen me GM, you know that this is true. I am much more aggressive with pacing than 99% of GMs that are out there. And the reason why that's important is because I know that there are people out there who might level up, and let's say they get to 5th level or whatever. I'll give you a great example. We'll use a basic D&D example. They get to 5th level, and the wizard really excitedly takes Fireball. And that session, the players spend the majority of the session, investigating some political thing, and no Fireball is cast. And then the next week, The group gets, really sucked into this really long journey system. They're traveling, and there's a lot of campfire scenes and a lot of role playing, and there's a lot of bullshitting, and there no fights occur. There are barely any dice rolled, say, in that session. And then they get to the third right? And now it's the third session, and that wizard hasn't even cast Fireball once. Whereas my style of GMing is much more aggressively paced towards, getting into stuff, getting into mechanics, getting into scenes that, scenes of substance. We'll call them SOSs, right? Scenes of substance, as opposed to scenes of nonsense. And so 3 sessions with me is a lot of gameplay. 3 sessions with other GMs might not be a lot of gameplay. I think back to like the way that a lot of people, like I run Blades in the Dark, and I try to get a minimum of two scores in per session, sometimes 3. And people are like, how do you even do that? They're like, we took, our score took 2 sessions, and then we took 2 or 3 sessions to get through the next free play and downtime. So that means in like 5 sessions, they went through 1 score. Whereas in my campaign, 5 sessions, you may have been through 10 to 12 to 13 scores. So that kind of scaling difference is huge. Is huge. No? Just checking my battery. So I like faster paced games. That's just, for me. And also, like you said, it depends on how often you're playing. Back in the day, we would play sometimes 12 hours a week, in like 2 or 3 session increments. So 2 hours, 6 hours on Friday, 6 hours on Saturday. And so that's 12 hours of gameplay. That, if I was playing weekly, now that would be at least a month. And even then, if I'm playing weekly, it really means I'm getting in maybe 3 sessions a month, maybe at most, and some months 2. So, suddenly that, and those sessions are like 3 hours long. So yeah, it obviously takes a lot longer. Dave, take care, buddy. Yeah, right. I let them chill and vibe. I do not. I push. And I've always done that. And to be fair, again, I mean, it's not a narrative thing. It's just because I grew up playing D&D. In D&D, the game system itself punishes the players for sitting around. Random encounters, and most of my games were taking place in dungeons. And so if the group, decided to dawdle, I'd be like, okay, you can dawdle, but you're going to pay the price for that with a random encounter. And the random encounter, right, didn't really generate not a lot of experience, didn't generate any treasure. It was just a drain on resources, and it could probably kill you. So, yeah. As a result, let's get moving. Let's get going. Gus says, I like a faster-paced game as well. I just want to cut to the interesting parts. My players, not so much. I've been struggling to adapt. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, again, it depends on what an RPG is to you. I think about sitting down to play a board game. Let's say that, you and me, Gus and Vin, we're sitting down. We're sitting down here to play a board game, and we're there fundamentally to play the board game. And of course, there's going to be conversations that aren't board game centric. But if it's like somebody's turn and they're sitting there and they're holding the dice and they haven't rolled them yet, and they're just talking and bullshitting about, I don't know, the local sports team or what's going on with the Avengers movie or whatever, it's like, okay, fine, but we are here to play the game. Can we keep the game moving? And I feel the same way about RPGs. Can we keep the game moving? Now, for some people, sitting around, I don't know, chilling and vibing in character is the game. I don't think it is. Unless you are awarding experience points for that. If you're awarding experience points for it, then it becomes the game. But if it's not the game, if you're not awarding experience for it, then it's not the game, and you should be doing something else. Yeah, Gus. I feel you there. My players do not want to do that, by the way. So I have the advantage that me and my players are aligned, and that works out well to everyone's advantage. Right, which is just like, let's move it ahead, let's move it away. I try to eliminate as much, faffing about, fluff, friction as possible. Let's just get to the good stuff. I mean, it's the reason why, take care, Vin. Always good to see you, bye. as well. It's one of the reasons I've really enjoyed the One Ring. I like mechanics for journeys, but we did a journey in the second adventure for the One Ring. Right, it was a journey of 30 or more days. It was across the length and breadth of Eriador. It was a pretty long journey, right? 30 days. And in a hex crawl, I mean, my God, that might have taken sessions to do that. And we were able to do it in one session and a little bit of change because of the way that the One Ring's rules works. It still felt like we went on a journey. It still felt epic and long, but it didn't take 5 or 6 sessions. So that's one of the reasons why I like those rules specifically for the One Ring. And I know Trevor Duvall from Me, Myself, and I, with his Broken Empires, heavily inspired by that system for his travel system, because his journeys system, because he felt the same way. Oh, that's an interesting question, Stan. I don't actually know. I mean, that's an interesting point. I'd have to think about it a bit myself, but I just think it comes down to, like, what is it that, why are people playing a role-playing game? And my group, and I would say the birth of the hobby, we've been playing for a long time. It's not to play pretend as much. It's more of an adventure game, right, than a acting game. So I like to focus on the adventure. I like to focus on the stuff that feels like it would be appropriate for an adventure. Now, to be clear, it is entirely possible that, if you don't have any sort of elements to it, the game could become very, if it's just like monster grind, kill things, get treasure, level up, the game can be very, very dull as well. But to be clear, some people really like that as well. There's a reason people really like playing MMOs and video games and stuff like that, because you just kill monsters and level up for the most part. And then get the story fed to you in cutscenes, which is, to be clear, the way that a lot of people end up playing RPGs anyways. Yeah, Foundry does feel a little weird to me. Yeah. So again, but I'm also not opposed to the idea that, like, a rock and rolling dungeon crawl is still fun for me. And, there's not a lot of deep meaning into it. It's not a character growth moment. Because again, I'm if I want to play a game about character growth and character arcs, I'm going to go play Avatar Legends, or I'm going to go play Vampire 6th Edition, right? Where you have the struggle between my character. I'm going to pick a game that does that, and that the game mechanics and the reward cycles, right, encourage that interface with that, work with that space. Torchbearer, Burning Wheel. Burning Wheel is all about your character, about setting beliefs for your character and setting goals for your character, and then challenging those beliefs, and having those beliefs be challenged while you pursue your goals. That's what the game is about, like, mechanically. And so the whole structure of the system of the game is designed to support that idea. And, I see a lot of people playing that game, not Burning Wheel, but they're playing a game where they're like, this is a game about my character's beliefs and what I'm doing. And they're playing D&D, 5th edition. And I go, what are you doing? That's not a game about that, Oh, absolutely. I mean, Marcus Aurelius, I've talked about this before. I was so excited in the early 90s. I had started playing the dungeon board games, like Hero Quest. Hero Quest was like my first dungeon board game. My parents had got it for me. And because I loved the Choose Your Own Adventure books, and I loved The Hobbit. I don't think I had read Lord of the Rings yet, but whatever. Anyways, I loved it. And then I got Dungeons and Dragons, the box set, the basic box set, and I absolutely loved it. And my uncle and my nephew, or my uncle and my cousin was about 10 years older than me. My uncle was about 20 years older than me. It was my dad's youngest brother, that was the uncle, and then it was my dad's eldest brother's oldest son, so that was the nephew. So that's why the ages were like that. And I was so excited because they basically were kind of like, it was almost like a indoctrination. They were like, he is ready. You are now old enough and cool enough. You can come hang out with us. And I was so excited. So it was like, 92, 93 or something like that. And I finally got to go to their D&D game. And they were playing because their campaign obviously reached back into AD&D First Edition, but they were kind of playing like a hybrid, right, of like AD&D First Edition and Second Edition. And I was so excited for it. And then games like Diablo came out, and I remember all those guys were like, "Why would we play D&D anymore? We've got Diablo." And I remember being so mad. I was because literally their campaign kind of broke up because of games like Diablo and that generation of the newer generation of video games, because up even to that point you had Eye of the Beholder and Might and Magic video games, but they were still pretty they were just the isometric single shot. I mean, I love those games. I think they're fantastic. I definitely want to play those on stream sometime. My God, I love those games so much. I haven't played them in probably 20 years or something like that. But I love those games so much. I grew up with those games. But so anyways, they were just they thought, okay, Diablo is here. And they were all they were kind of technophiles. They all had their computers, their Pentiums, their 486s, their 486DX, upgraded from their 386, and they were really excited for it. Anyways. Right, exactly, Marcus. They were like, this is great. I don't need any of these annoying people. Because for them, D&D was about killing monsters, getting loot, hanging out, having a few beers, and they're like, I could just do that with Diablo. I don't need a group to do that. So their relationship with the hobby and with D&D, I think, was very similar. Anyways, this is a whole long spiel about what I might theoretically, what I would like to probably maybe do in the future. I'm going to run my Blades in the Dark game and my Avatar game and my Daggerheart game and my Blades in the Dark game and my Avatar game, because I committed to them, and God help me, I don't know when they're going to actually get done. But it depends on everyone's schedule and all that other stuff. But I think for the future, what I might do, and I talked about a little bit about this jokingly, and I was like, maybe actually I will do this, is to do something more like a West March. Where it's a campaign, and when I'm available, I will post that I'm available. Not necessarily posting a game. I'll just say, hey guys, I'm available Monday night, Sunday night, and Tuesday night next week. And if people sign up and use their tickets, they can run their character, and it'll be some kind of dungeon, an old school Gary Gygax dungeon game. That's a great question, Stan. What system? I don't know. That's the real question, right? The joke at the time when we were talking about this originally was I was going to run D&D 3rd edition. And that you would have to pay. I was going to be pay to win too. If you paid more tickets, you would get a better better dice or a better set of ability scores to roll your character ability scores. Or if you wanted to have a class that was outside of the core player's handbook, you had to pay more tickets. And if you wanted a multi-class, you had to pay more tickets. So it's not technically paying to win, because normally those are just the rules. But it's like a wink and a nod. But it's sort of like a tongue-in-cheek that we're not really taking this super seriously. But anyways, I was like, but the appeal of that is, number one, if I don't post any, there's no expectation that there will be a session every week. There's no expectation that there will be a session every Friday. There might be an opportunity where on a random Friday, I say, hey guys, I'm free this Friday. My group canceled and I'm not doing anything. And if people sign up, great. If people don't sign up, not great. Or it's fine. And people only have to there's no guarantee or promise that you will be able to play, except for when the times come up. And so there's a strong appeal to it. To be fair, that's the same reason we did the mega campaign with Northern Reaches, because the idea was, hey, this is a way for GMs to be able to just run games when they want, and for players to be able to play when they can, and we'll mix and match, those people together. Now, it still turns out that the number one thing that keeps games from being successful is GMs, right? Because it's a lot of work to GM, and especially in a game like Pathfinder 2, it's a lot of effort and a lot of work, and it's not like our GMs are being paid or anything like that. They're doing it volunteer work, and I appreciate that. But when GMs stop posting as many games, players stop playing, and then interest and stuff falls off. So, Gus, that's a great question. Gus asks, how well do you think Wes March's style games will work for more narrative games like Fate or FU? Gus, we have yet to answer that question. There was a lot of discussion about would we do a Daggerheart Wes March. And one of the things that we discussed, the problem is with how much narrative control that a GM has, and to a certain extent the players have, does that run into a problem with a community based game? And maybe it does, because I think you are giving up some of your control to the wider perspective. We've had that problem even in Pathfinder and Dragonbane, where most GMs are used to being the lord and master of their universe. So if you're running, if your game master, if she's running a game and she's running it for her own group, she can do whatever she wants. And so people naturally sort of think in those terms. And when they run suddenly a Pathfinder game or whatever game, a Dragonbane game, but you're part of this community game, you give up some of that authority and some of that power. And so she might be a little bit, miffed or feel constrained because she doesn't have the same level of sort of godlikeness and power. So yeah. Stan says Dark Sun 5e. Lol. Stan, I mean, I would never probably do that for my community. My community is actually strongly anti-5e. My community is more anti-5e than me. Because remember, for me, I've been playing these new games for a long time. So, right, like for me, they're not new. But for a lot of people who come to this channel and this community, they do it because they're leaving traditional gaming, and so they don't have any desire to go back to that. So, but that could be interesting. Certainly, I think West Marches are fun when they're like a little bit more lethal, and we could have fun with that. Marcus, Shadow Deep's not a bad idea. You could play test the Mega Dungeon and play with Patreon members. Marcus, great idea. There's one core problem with Shadow Deep. It's a problem in general, and I've actually had that conversation, which is the idea of Shadow Deep is that we're going to be developing it, at least mostly or partially live or open. And so it kind of defeats the purpose if the people who are playing the game are also the people who watch the streams and already know everything about the dungeon, because it's one huge big spoiler. So yeah. Hey, Guitar Guy Nick, what's up? I'm not quite sure I follow you there, Guitar Guy Nick. What if you have a meta control and use what most narrative constraints use, and that's a political environment constraint that happens in a load of games? Not quite sure what you mean by that. Oh, Gus, yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone should hate 5e. I think it's a totally serviceable game system. But yeah, it's not the be-all. It is not the best game of all time. It is, it's the pepperoni pizza. It's the cheese pizza. It's the vanilla ice cream of games. It works for most people, but it's not. It's not the best. And it's entirely possible that given a choice between every flavor of ice cream and every flavor or every type of pizza, you would pick the plain cheese. And that's okay. That's great. Then that is the game that you should be playing. And I respect that. And no one should make you feel bad for that. But all I'm saying is you might be like, I'm like, okay, well, you say you really like vegetables, right? And you also really love roasted peppers on your sandwiches. Why don't you get like a veggie supreme pizza with like bananas and banana peppers and roasted red peppers and mushrooms and onions, and they're like, oh yeah, I should try that, right? That's like that in RPGs. I'm like, if what you really do want is cheese pizza. Now, of course, keep in mind, if I had no other prior knowledge and I had to cater a group, and I had to order 2-3 large sheet pizzas or whatever for a group, I'm probably not going to order a pineapple bacon pizza, because it's probably not going to work for a good chunk of people. I'm probably going to get a cheese pizza and a pepperoni pizza and maybe a veggie pizza, but probably, honestly, you'd probably be best with just getting cheese pizzas and maybe one pepperoni pizza. But my point is, no one's going to, because anyone who would eat pepperoni pizza is going to eat cheese pizza, right? But of course, people get tired of eating cheese pizza all the time, and that's why they come to this campaign anyways. Oh, I see what you're saying, Guitar Guy Nick. You're saying like the diegetic constraint of the game. The problem is, Guitar Guy Nick, is even within Blades in the Dark and even within Vampire the Masquerade and even within Delta Green, each GM, that they're going to interpret that differently. That's the problem. And we see that. I mean, we have rules and restrictions within our Northern Reaches campaign and Dragonbane campaign, and GMs sometimes bump into that, and then we get into like, well, this GM did this, and that GM did this, and it is a problem. Stan, I'm talking for mega games. For me personally, no. If it's one GM, like a true West March, if it's one GM and 20 or 30 players, then there's no problem whatsoever. Yeah, you are still the lord. You are still the lord and master of your entire world. So I'm talking about a case like when we do our mega games where we have many GMs who are all participating in that. So I could run Daggerheart as a mega game, right? Because I'm the one making all those calls and decisions. I could do that, yes. But if I was if people want to know Daggerheart as a mega game, which is to say multiple GMs, that's when I think you get to a problem there. Right. So the advantage, Mr. Rikzinski, particularly about PF2, is kind of rules tight, right? The math is tight. And so there's an advantage there because we can just tell the GMs, just follow the rules. And they're going to, do that. And by the way, taking a big step back, you just recreated the reason why AD&D exists. Now, I know a lot of people like to say, oh, it's because Gary Gygax wanted to erase Dave Arneson's name off of the books. No, I mean, that might be the reason, and that might be part of the reason. But the real reason is that Gary saw this problem where D&D was becoming more popular and every DM was running their own version of D&D, and he wanted one core version of D&D so that when you took your character from one GM's campaign to another GM's campaign, and yes, that was like the default assumption of how games worked, is that your player, like all the campaigns were sort of in one world, and you could take your character and go play with, Gus, and then take your character home with you and go play in K-Tube's dungeon. He's like, I want to create consistency. I want to create a very comprehensive rule set so that these games are more similar than they are dissimilar. The original D&D leaves too much open to interpretation. There's not enough rules, and so GMs are having to come up with a bunch of house rules and coming up with all sorts of things. And that means that the games that you're playing in are, yes, exactly, Scotty, the first attempt at organized play. It's exactly right, Scotty. That's exactly right. It's 100% right. So, exactly. You get it, Gus. He made the rules tighter to make multiple GMs in one setting more viable, which is why Pathfinder 2 works so well with our mega games. Now, we still get into trouble because, of course, we've been playing Pathfinder 2 for 6 years, and so people get really antsy, and they want to change the rules, and then when they start wanting to change the rules, you start bumping into some of the constraints and restrictions of that as well. Let me check the battery here. All right, we got 23%. And so that's really interesting. Something to consider. But we do run into those problems, of course. But yeah, if it's just me, yeah, it could be whatever game system I would want. But the idea is that kind of drop-in play becomes way more appealing, I think, for, say, a mega dungeon than it does for a more structured narrative campaign, because where did your character go, for months at a time? Whereas I think dungeons make more sense, right? You could think of it like, I even think Blades in the Dark could work really well, because you think of the sessions as scores, or in the dungeon case, you think of them as like expeditions, right, or delves, and so that you have this sort of town, very Tristram-like town, like from Diablo, and it's nearby or set over some ancient, right? And if you remember back to our Shadow Deep discussions, right, we had that town. I think it was called, we never officially gave it a name, but I think we called it Grey Watch. And it was basically this town that was built over Shadow Deep. Whether the town came first or the dungeon came first. I actually think the dungeon came first in our example. But, and the idea is that you have there's a whole sort of community or infrastructure built around this idea that you have this town built over a big ancient dungeon that sort of serves this local economy of adventurers who come to Grey Watch in order to delve into the depths. And so one session of play represents your characters going into the dungeon, going deep, getting stuff, getting treasure, getting experience, and then getting back out, right? And then that's the cycle of play. That's interesting, Mr. Rosinski. I mean, a lot of people would agree with you too, as well. But correct, Gus. It's that's how Castle Blackmore worked. That's how Castle Greyhawk worked. This is how all the. I'm not sitting here saying I'm creating anything revolutionary. This is literally what the original creators of the game did. And the reason that Gary did that is because Gary did not have a set of players. Gary had like 35 or 40 players in his campaign. I've read letters and notes from him, even interviews where he'll be talking about, like, he's like, I would be hot at work, halfway through my pack of daily camels or whatever, Pall Malls or whatever the fuck he smoked, and he's like, there'd be a knock at the basement, the knock at the door, and I could hear my wife letting in a group of local kids who were like, is Mr. Gygax home? We want to go into the dungeon. And like he'd be like, I'd get up from my typewriter, and within minutes we were back into the dungeon, and like that's how he like ran his game, so. So yeah, a Blades mega game would be really interesting. The problem, K-Tube, with a Blades mega game, parties, crews. That's the problem. Now, you could solve this slightly, maybe, partially, by making everybody part of the same crew. So, but that's not ideal. Crows could also be similar. I mean, crows, I think the predication of crows is quite literally just old school D&D. So I could see that as well, Kyojin. It's actually a good, something to keep a close eye on. I will say, I got reached out to from folks at Kenzer. I think we're going to do some sort of interview or collab or something. I don't know. I don't actually know if I'm going to make any money. I don't think so. But we're going to have some people on about the Hackmaster 25 anniversary Kickstarter campaign that's going on right now. So that'd be kind of cool. But, it's always fun to have people on. But, yeah, Crows looks cool. I mean, Crows is an attempt to create if Crows looks cool, I agree with you. It's because it's Dungeon World. I mean, literally is Dungeon World. The 2D10 mechanic is the 2D6 mechanic. It's quite literally Dungeon World. And I enjoy Dungeon World, so. But. Anyways, but I do think I want to go to, I think in the future I do want to go to some sort of, and that does restrict the kind of games that I can run, but I think it gives me a lot of freedom for my schedule, for my player's schedule, and I can just be like, hey, this week I have 4 slots open, and next week I have 0 slots open, and so if you have a character and you want to play, sign up and play. If you can't, that's it, But, yeah. But, taking a step back from that, my real ultimate goal is to eliminate the GM entirely. Right? That's the whole idea of the Moria campaign, which is a solo mega game, or my sort of evolving dream, which is to create we jokingly say Wilderfeast, just because I think that concept works so well for a mega community campaign. I think the mechanics are cool too, but I'm actually more interested in the core gameplay idea, which is to create something that is GM-less. Whether it's solo or it's collab, and use that as a basis for the community building aspect. Anyways, but we are always learning stuff from our mega campaigns. But at the end of the day, I really like I really like the idea of community, and that's what I want to build. I'm not interested in getting one of the key problems that I've always run into, even over these last 5 years, is I didn't create Northern Reaches or Dragon Tide so that people... Now, to be clear, Bob was excited about Dragon Tide because Bob likes Dragonbane. And Bob's like, oh, this is an excuse for me to get to play Dragonbane. A lot of people join Northern Reaches because they're like, I really like Pathfinder 2 and I want to play Pathfinder 2. Those are all fine reasons. But my goal was never to do that. right? I don't care about PF2, and I don't care about Dragonbane. I care about creating a community experience, right? And so that's what my number one goal. And a lot of the changes and ideas that I have proposed to those games, or that I have implemented, have been met with not always the greatest amount of acceptance from the communities who play them, because I am changing the fundamental qualities of those two core systems so that I can create a more community-oriented game, and the people who are oftentimes playing those games are not playing those games for the community-oriented aspect. They're playing those games because they like Dragonbane or they like Pathfinder 2, and I'm fucking that up in my pursuit of community or engagement. But yeah, Gus, a GM-less mega game. That's the idea, right? I don't hate GMs, Mr. Renzi. I just accept and acknowledge that they are the bottleneck. They are the limiting reagent. A mega campaign, as we have created them, lives and dies based off of GMs signing up to run games. If GMs do not sign up to run games, the mega game does not exist. And our own data has shown that as time goes on, we get less GMs, not more. Meaning that, we might have 30 people who sign up to be a GM at the beginning of a campaign, and by the end of a campaign, it's down to 10. We also know that we run into problems that sometimes our most active GMs are also the ones who tend to, can feel constrained by the restrictions of the mega campaign. Because they're so engaged, they tend to feel a sense of ownership over their environment, over their game systems, and they feel the constraints of the system. There's some arbitrary council of GMs or me or Bob making some ruling that they don't agree with, and they're like, I run 5 games a week. What do you do? So and we've had people be like, look, it's your game, but I don't have to run games. You're not paying me. I'm not under any contractual obligation. It's a volunteer thing. We try to give GMs like, oh, we'll give you some bonus currency in your character, but at the end of the day, it is essentially volunteer, 100%. So, and that's fine. People have the right to just say, I don't want to run. If those are the rules of the game that you're setting out, I don't need to run it. But yeah, so GMs are the bottleneck, Well, Kyojin, you say Ironsworn mega game, the Moria mega game that we have proposed, which is going to be predominantly solo, is the Moria supplement for the One Ring has an extensive set of solo. The Moria game has an extensive set of solo rules built into it that were written by Sean Tompkins, and Sean Tompkins is the author of Ironsworn. So, yes, Ironsworn vis-a-vis Moria, but yes. I have not heard of Push SRD. No, I have not heard of that. Yeah. So, very cool stuff. And actually, he commented, or he was in our chat the one time. I think when we were talking about Moria. I think in our Moria live stream, Sean Tompkins showed up in our chat, and he was vibing. He said, "Oh, I'm a fan of the channel, and I love you guys." And I was like, "Oh, that's sick." So in theory, maybe there's a world where I can reach out to Sean and be like, "Hey, we have some ideas. Can you help us out? Or we'd like to change this. Can you help us out?" Thoughts on the new Dark Conspiracy? I don't know that I know what a Dark Conspiracy is, or that there's a new one. Check the time. Almost 6. I'll have to leave here eventually. Well, Mr. Residency, when you're playing by yourself, you have to ask yourself, what are we even doing here? Oh, no, Joe, I definitely do not keep up with what Mongoose is publishing these days. The Mr. Residency, the problem with solo gaming is in many ways the same problem that I have with people who play regular D&D, which is, like, if you're playing solo and you roll the dice and it says, I don't know, your axe breaks. Okay, let's just say we're playing, um, we're playing Moria, and we roll on the random table, and it says your axe breaks. Now you're playing by yourself, so the only person you're beholden to is yourself and God. And you go, that's lame. I don't want to. I don't want that. I'm gonna roll till I get something I like. That you're free to do that. You're not fucking over anybody. But I do have to ask. I do have to wonder, what's the point of what are you actually doing here? Now, if for some people that could be very enjoyable, but for me, it's like, isn't the fun of it being like, okay, hey, we're gonna roll it and we're gonna go forward with it, and we're gonna embrace that, and I think that's what makes it fun. So there's room for rulings because obviously, it's not literally everything is spelled out, but at the same time, I think you have to roll with the punches because that's the whole point, is to be pushed into a place where you're not just picking the thing that you want to have happen. But I feel like that's what a lot of people do with their TTRPGs anyways, with fudging and just kind of, shaping the narrative, even though you feel like you're using dice, but you're not really using dice. Will the Fabula Ultima Bestiary allow you to improvise encounters? Well, that depends what you mean, Marcus, because the Fabula Ultima Bestiary already exists. That's a defined product. That's why I don't call mine a bestiary, because there is a book called Fabula Ultima Bestiary, Volume 1, I think, is what it's actually called. Or maybe it's just called Bestiary, but... So I don't know if you mean that. As for my book, well, I don't know. Improvise encounters? I mean, I don't know. Okay, the one I'm making. I mean, the core game already has encounter creation rules, so the only difference is that we are providing you with a list of, say, 300 monsters that you can pick from to put into that encounter. So, if your party is level 10 and you want a hard encounter, then you should pick monsters that are up to level 20, which is 10 levels higher than your characters. And you should pick a number of monsters equal to the number of party members plus 1. So if you have 3 parties members, then you should pick 4 soldier equivalent monsters. That could be 4 soldier monsters. That could be 2 soldier monsters and 1 elite monster, which counts as 2. And then as long as those monsters are are the party's level or higher, up to level 10, the game says that should be hard. So it's a very wide range because, again, the game's kind of loosey-goosey. It's not super tight math. So that's how you make an encounter. Correct, Woodland Fellowship. Using oracles is the very definition of rulings in solo. And obviously you have to interpret oracles. That's the whole point of them, right? The oracles are subject to interpretation. But like if you roll on the oracle and table and you get like something like, misfortune equipment, yes, you might have to decide, what does that mean? Does that mean that you like lose your backpack? Does it mean that your shield breaks? Does it mean that your armor becomes rusted? Does it mean your axe is destroyed? You do get room for a certain amount of rulings depending on how detailed the oracle tables are. What I'm saying is that if you go, I don't want that to happen, that doesn't sound fun, and you could re-roll. I mean, you could do that. There's no one, you're not beholden to anyone but yourself, but at that point you're like, why are you even rolling on the oracle table then? If you're just like, I don't like that, I'm going to roll again. I don't like that one, I'm going to roll again. I don't like that one, I'm going to roll again. It's like when I see people do that all the time, they'll be like, it'll do that, roll randomly or choose. And then I'll see people, I'm like, okay, that's fine. If that's the rule in the game, roll randomly or choose. But then I'll see people who will roll randomly, not like the result that they get. Roll randomly, not like the result that they get. Roll randomly, not get the result that they like. Roll randomly, then get elf and go, okay, I'll go with elf. That behavior is very strange to me. I don't understand it. Maybe that's you. In which case, I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I'm just saying I don't understand it. If you wanted to be an elf, just pick elf. If you wanted to roll randomly, you should roll randomly. I don't understand the idea of like rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling until you randomly roll the thing that you wanted to be anyways. And I hear a lot of people say, I didn't know I wanted to be an elf until I rolled randomly. And that is really a weird... No, it's not fudging, Animazebon, because, again, you're not really hurting anybody but yourself, I guess. So I don't think that's fudging. I just don't understand what the purpose of it is. But I've heard people say that. I didn't know what I wanted to be until I rolled randomly, and I got a result. And that's very strange to me. But this also gets back to the whole point where people are like, oh, yeah, when I play a character, their actions surprise me. And I'm like, how is that possible? And they're like, well, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, you didn't know what you were going to do? I don't know. I tend to be more, maybe, I don't know. I'm more aware of the motivations that I'm making for the decisions and the actions that I'm taking. Yeah, guitar guy. I'm sure there's a reason, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what they're doing. I'm just saying I don't understand it. Yeah, Stan, you're 100% right. So what Stan's talking about is the ice, like the original Baldur's Gate games and all the Black Isle Studio games and the Interplay games. Like you had to make your character using like the AD&D Second Edition engine, and so you would roll your stats, and you'd get like whatever 12 strength, 13 dex, 11 con, and then you could reroll, and you could reroll, and you could reroll, and you could reroll, and you could reroll. You could reroll infinite number of times until you literally, technically, if you had enough time, rolled infinite, you could have straight 18s. Oh, Salt, I mean, we've had this discussion ad infinitum, but people sometimes literally do talk about this like as if it's like truly ex nihilo, right? It's emerging from nowhere and from nothing. Marcus says in Baldur's Gate 3, you just save it in important parts and reload until you get the roll you want, right? And the save scumming, I think is what they call it. Yeah. Mr. Renz said, where are you watching people play solo RPGs there? I'm not. Well, I mean, me, myself, and Die, he plays solo RPGs, so there you go. You could go watch him. But when people talk about, like, for example, in our in like Dragonbane, the official character creation rules say there's a lot of Land of Eam, I think, does this. A bunch of games do this, where they'll give a D12 chart, and it'll say randomly roll your character race or choose. It'll say that. So I've seen people, some people will choose, some people will roll randomly, and then I see actually a lot of people will roll, not like it, and then re-roll, or roll and then choose. What I do like is Warhammer Fantasy role-playing. I think, well, the Old World does this. I don't, because I just read the book, but I don't know if the Warhammer Fantasy, not Old World, does this. But in Warhammer Fantasy, when it comes to roll your race, you roll randomly, and if you roll randomly and you keep what you rolled randomly, that's your race or that's your class, and you get a couple bonus build points for when you later on down the character creation when it's time to buy your skills and abilities. If you roll your race and you don't like it, you can re-roll. And if you re-roll and you choose the one that you re-rolled, you get a little bit less build points. And then if you don't like that one, you can just pick whichever race you want or pick whatever class you want, but then you don't get any of those bonus build points. So your character quite literally is stronger if you just roll and keep what you roll. But the game does give you an out if you really want to be an elf. But you don't get those free build points or whatever skill points or feat points or whatever you want to call them for the end of the at the end of the game or the end of the character creation process. So I mean I know Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay does that, but yeah, so that's pretty cool. Now, of course, you guys think that sounds awesome. There's a lot of people who think that sounds terrible. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm being punished for choosing the character that I want. But that's another thing too. Like, I don't like to like create a character. I like to discover a character. But anyways, I think it's a good in between, and I'm a big fan of that myself. I think that's a really fun process because it gives you an incentive to embrace the randomness, to embrace the chaos, but it also acknowledges that maybe you really do want to be an elf, in which case you get to be an elf. Now, if you roll it randomly on the first roll, mazel tov, right? You got to be an elf and you got to do the thing, but more than likely you won't get that. Dragonbane does this in some ways. So when you roll your ancestry in Dragonbane, it's a D12 roll, but it's not equal. So like an elf is only on an 11. A wolfkin are only on a 12 because those are rare ancestries. Human is like a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So 25% or something of the rolls are human. And then I think like halfling is like 5, 6, and 7. So it's like, oh no, I'm sorry. Humans are like 33% of the rolls. Halflings are like 25% of the rolls. Like dwarves take up 2 spots. Trying to think of the other race. Ducks, I think, take up 2 races or whatever, or 2 spots. But so like elves and wolfkin and ducks or something like that are rarer. And so when when Bob and I created the rules for Dragontide, which is our Dragonbane mega game, you have to roll randomly for your race. And if you don't like what you rolled, you can be a human. So you can't just choose any race. The default race is human. So basically, when it comes time to choose your race, you roll a d12. If you get an elf, you can be an elf. If you get a dwarf, you can be a dwarf. Otherwise, you have to be a human. And that way, elves stay rare because they are supposed to be rare. Now in Dragonbane, I don't think that the elves are super broken or anything. I mean, I think they're pretty good. I think they're pretty strong. But Wolfkin, I think, are also pretty. Maybe they are a little strong, but it's not like the One Ring where elves are like really, really, really strong. So like if you were playing the One Ring with a bunch of like min-maxers, everyone would be an elf, right? But even then, like the One Ring kind of counteracts that because like when the elves use their elvenness, it increases the eye awareness. When you leave your safe haven at the beginning of an adventure, your starting eye awareness goes up the more elves you have in the party because, right, like the agents of the enemy, the servants of Sauron are going to pay a lot more attention to, say, 4 elves, leaving from Rivendell on a mission versus, a couple humans and hobbits leaving from Bree. Anyway, so there's a little bit of balance to that. But anyways, hey, what's up, Tim? You been playing any EverQuest, Tim? I joked that so tomorrow it's going to be a tough day because tomorrow or tonight we've got dinner and I spent the day at the pool and then we have dinner and then we have we're going to a show tonight. Well, tomorrow we just have dinner. Now it's at Bavette's, which is my favorite steakhouse in Vegas. This is my favorite restaurant in Vegas, but we don't have any shows and it's supposed to be like 110. So I don't think I'm going to go to the pool because I think it's going to be really hot. And so the joke was with the patron. We were talking about this on like Wednesday or Thursday or something like that. I was like, what are the odds that what are the odds that I get a laptop? Because I didn't bring my laptop. Well, like, what are the odds that I go get a laptop so that I can go play EverQuest while I'm in Vegas? Because again, to be clear, I love this place. But, I came because it was basically free for me to come. But I don't have the kind of disposable income that I usually have in the past when I would come to Vegas, right? When I was gainfully employed and making good money and, and everything was solid, I could come to Vegas and spend, $1,500 or $2,000 on gambling. And, that was, again, a single guy, whatever. I don't have that kind of money. I may be good for a couple $100, right? So I really have to limit what I can do here. So I've been going live. I spent 2 hours yesterday going live. I'll probably go live tomorrow. But the joke was that I would go and you might say, well, Derek, what would, well, I was like, well, yeah, I would return the laptop. That was the joke. I wouldn't just buy a laptop and keep it. I would return it. Animazemon. No, you roll for a bunch of stuff, Animazemon. There's other things that you roll. There's a lot of stuff. I think you roll for your stats. I think you roll for your stat array. You roll for your class. Or profession is what they call it in that game. I think you roll for like your secondary skill. You roll for your equipment. There's you roll almost randomly for everything. Animazemon. Correct, Selden. Burning Wheel elves are also very powerful. They're very powerful in Torchbearer as well. But the game isn't about being powerful. It's about the interesting characters and their beliefs. And the One Ring is the same way. Elves are very powerful in the One Ring, but it's not about just being an elf and beating all the challenges. I mean, again, and that would be a very different campaign if it was. That being said, if you were playing Burning Wheel and everybody was an elf, it would be a very different type of game than if you had, dwarves and orcs and humans. And Tim said he is farming the Frenzied Ghoul right now. That's awesome. Yeah, I got to 46, Tim, right before I left. So technically my character is now planar. And obviously, I've got my wizard up to whatever level we got to. Not quite 40, right? We were like low 30s or something. And then before I left, I restarted as a paladin wizard bard. So I want to try like some AoEing and see what that's like. I've never been a bard. In fact, I even debated using because again, people have donated, and I had the fake money, and I was just going to buy a primary class unlock token, so I could unlock a class, so I didn't have to be a paladin. Not because I dislike the paladin; I think the paladin's great, but just to play something completely different, right? And so nothing paladin, nothing whatever, and be like something completely different. Paladin, Wizard, Bard sounds like a Skald. Yeah, it sounds pretty cool. I mean, EverQuest Legends is really fun. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's really given me a lot of considerations about ideas that I have for game design. It reminds me a lot of Fabula Ultima, actually. In Fabula Ultima, you start with 3 classes. And it's a lot of fun because you can really create a really interesting character. EverQuest Legends does have a little bit of a problem where there's a meta and there's definitely some options that are stronger than other options, but that's not a problem because the game isn't competitive. So, everybody should just, dance to the beat of their own drum. But yeah, overall, I think it's fine. Yeah, Tim. Yeah, well, again, I had the advantage, Tim, that had some tips. That's why we need to do another group stream so that we can get sponsored and get some money. Andrew says, I couldn't do EQL. I just handle grind. I think he said, I can't handle grind games anymore. I need a narrative. Well, that's the difference, Andrew. You're absolutely right. I don't do grind games anymore. I actually don't need a narrative. I actually think narratives are really annoying and boring. I don't really see that game as a grind because they've made it so easy. And so for me, it feels more like a power fantasy. So what you call a grind, I call a power fantasy. Yeah. Oh, Gus, that's a really interesting question about what is the role of class identity. What's the role of class identity in a game, and how distinct should a class be? Because you're absolutely right, Gus. The class identity, you call them jobs, call them whatever. It does feel much more loose than in a game where it's like, oh, every barbarian is this. I mean, Vanilla WoW was a grind. I mean, original EverQuest was quite literally a grind. There were levels in EverQuest that were literally designed. They were called hell levels. There was levels in the game that were built into the game for them to be extra difficult and require a lot more experience points just to make the game harder. Because, taking longer to play the game meant that you needed to stay subscribed longer, and that meant that they got more money off of you. So, I mean, it was literally a sort of a bad motivated system. Yeah. Lugs, I love Oathhammer's take on it as well. I completely agree with you. I think Oathhammer's a great game, which reminds me, Lugs, again, the folks over at Broken Blade gave me like 5 books at Origins, and I need to give them some of those away, to give away. So I definitely want to do that. But yes, I mean, I think class identity is cool, but I do like it being skill-based. So I'm actually 100% there with you. So I do think class identity is important, and that's why I think that again, it depends on the game and all that other stuff, but it all depends on what you're trying to do with the game system, because class identity can also make you feel like a straitjacket. I think the weirdest situation is the D&D situation, honestly. The 3rd edition D&D and the 5th edition D&D, where class is this really strong structured identity, right? It's a class-based game. It's a very class-based game, right? All of your abilities are keyed and locked into your class and your level. But also you can multi-class. And I think that is where you get into a weird space. Like in Fabula Ultima, you can multi-class, right? You can have multiple. In fact, you have to have multiple classes. But the class identities are kind of weak, and you have this core identity that you write down separately. Like your core identity might be like, space pirate, and how you choose to express that identity of space pirate mechanically through the combination of, say, several different jobs or several different classes or professions is up to you. That's cool. But in D&D, it's like I'm the fighter. And I'm the wizard, and they're completely distinct classes with their own unique progression, and then the game says, but you can mix and match however you want. And then I'm like, whoa, what are we doing here? And in fact, the 3rd edition, now 5th edition does solve this a little. No, it doesn't actually. I lied. 5th edition does not solve this problem. Never mind. Well, no, right? Proficiency scales independent of your classes, right? But feats don't. I don't know. Anyways, the problem is in 3rd edition, like the game didn't even really work because you could classes were front loaded because they were designed to be used individually. So the game gave you all the feats and abilities that you needed to be a ranger or a barbarian. They gave them to you early in the classes so that you could actually, be a ranger or be a barbarian within the first level or 2 of the game, which meant that when you multi-classed into those classes, they became broken. Lugs, you and me both, we are the only people in the history of Worlds is that multi-class feat in 4E was not car op. In fact, a lot of people thought it was underpowered, right? And I think that's good because if you want it, and I still think it's really cool, Lugs. I mean, I still think like taking like half elves, right? Are kind of sort of built in multi-class a little bit, right? Because they can take a cantrip from a different class as an encounter power as their, or they could take an at-will power from another class as an encounter power as like their base racial ability. But I still think the idea of like a half-elf fighter who takes the multi-class feats to pick up wizard abilities is cool, but it's not OP because you're literally making your character weaker because you're not gaining additional powers. You're substituting your fighter powers for wizard powers, but you're doing it at the cost of feats. So you're basically down feats, but you're not up powers. Anyways, point is, you can't cheese it, and that's why people hated it, because it came from 3rd edition, where multiclassing meant cheese. Full stop. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Like, nobody multiclassed in 3rd edition for flavor. People multiclassed in 3rd edition for cheese. Maybe like 5% of people multiclassed for flavor, but most people multiclassed for cheese. So, Stan, your observation as a bystander is completely correct. We're down to 6% battery, Fico, so we're going to be wrapping up here a second. Yeah, so anyways, I love 3rd edition D&D. I hate, but my experience with 3rd edition is completely different than everyone else's experience with 3rd edition, which is when my group played 3rd edition. I mean, Tim knows this. Tim had, when Tim made his first character, Tim's first character in our 3rd edition campaign was a guy named Voldaire. He was a level 16 elven fighter. His second character was I think human, sorcerer named Alder. And he was eventually a level 20 sorcerer. No multi-class, no prestige class, just a sorcerer, and just a fighter. Tim had I'm trying to think of other characters that Tim had in my games. They were all, 90% of them were just single class. I would say 95% of them were single class. And then if we did have a multi-class character, they were usually like 50-50, right? You're like, oh, I'm a fighter 5, wizard 5, right? Like I'm a true multi-class character, almost like the way AD&D 2nd edition multi-classing worked. None of this like splash 1 level of this, splash 2 levels of this, pick up this prestige class, pick up that prestige class, take that prestige class for 1 level, take that prestige class for 3 levels, and it's just like your character is just this vomit of class mechanics. I hate it. So I'm a big fan of 4th edition's methodology. PF1 multi-classing was definitely power gaming as well. Nice, Jedi. Yeah, I mean, Marcus, I mean, that's... But see, the problem, Marcus, is though, is if you multi-class, you're just creating a new set of broken mechanics that you're going to continue to use over and over again. Now, what Marcus is talking about, though, is exactly why I prefer the idea of input randomness to my RPG. Now, I know this is a revolutionary concept because it's very gamist. It's very gamist. But I'm not thinking about simulationism anymore. I'm past that. I'm not saying that simulationism is bad. I just don't really care about it in my current world. And I like the idea that your actions are not dictated by whatever you want to do, right? Because again, the core idea of a role-playing game is like, everyone's always like, it's to replicate reality. I don't care about that. So I love the idea of input randomness. And people are like, what the fuck is input randomness? Magic the Gathering is an example of an input randomness game, right? You have these abilities in your deck, but you can't use them all, right? Imagine Magic the Gathering where you had all the cards in your deck in your hand at once and you could play whatever you want. That's D&D. In Magic the Gathering, you build a character, you build a deck, but what you get to do from turn to turn, from round to round, is highly dependent upon what cards you just drew. So there's a randomness to your choices. Now, the advantage, typically, of most input randomness games is that your actions then automatically succeed, depending on what is available in your hand. Slay the Spire does the same thing. And I think that's a really interesting space for RPGs that is, I think, underexplored. Panic at the Dojo is exactly. I mean, that was a huge... I mean, I've always enjoyed input randomness in games, but seeing it in Panic at the Dojo, Gus, when we did our first look on that, was a great eye-opening experience. Really enjoyed it. And again, very gamist. It's very gamist. What do you mean? Why can't I? Now, here's a funny thing. People will say, that sounds so gamist. That doesn't sound simulationist at all. But they don't bat an eye when they have some ability that they can only use once a day. Why can you only use that ability once a day? that sounds like a gamist construct to me. Especially, I mean, maybe if it's magical, it's a cleric, you can only once per day before the sun rises, you can only use this power once a day. Okay, fine, whatever. But it's like, why can your barbarian only rage twice a day? What if you go take a nap? Like, what happens? Like, why can you only do this number of times? It doesn't really make any sense, I don't know how it works either, Lugs, but I myself am interested in it. The other thing, anyways, point is, I think games are cool, and I think role-playing games are cool. And again, my experience with Oath, the board game, which I think is somewhat of not of a board game, and Arcs, which is a board game, but I think is somewhat not of a board game, have definitely interested me because again, I'm not interested in the cultural definition of what a role-playing game is. I'm interested in creating exciting experiences for people, and you can call it a board game, you can call it a role-playing game, you can call it whatever the fuck you want. All I know is that there's a certain vibe and feeling that I like in my games. And I was really pleased at NightCon when I got to play Oath several times with Jess Redicop. I didn't. The first game I didn't even play. I kind of just taught the game and oversaw it. But then I was in some of the other games, and I got to see her. Because again, Oath is seen through my eyes as someone who has a lot of experience with RPGs, and seeing it through Jess's eyes, and she came to kind of the same realization of being like, "Wow, this is a board game, but it's also a storytelling game, and it's also kind of a role-playing game, and it's weird because it's not a role-playing game, and there is no GM." But I'm also telling a story, and I'm also creating experiences, and I'm also kind of in character, even though it's a board game. And it's really weird, but I like it, and I think it's fun, and I think it's interesting, and that is a concept that I want to explore more. So, Hardrick, Pathfinder 2 does multi-classing A+. I love the way Pathfinder 2 is. I think that is the best piece of tech in the game, and I think that the archetype system is underutilized. I think they should have stopped making so many stupid classes. I think everything should have been an archetype. Hell, I joked that I wanted to see a Pathfinder 2 system where they got rid of classes, basically, and you created kind of like these super generic classes, like spellcasting class, whatever class, and then everything was archetypes. And actually, Jedi, I used to be really pro free archetype, and then I became anti free archetype because I realized it was just a cheesy way for people to get all the benefits of archetyping without actually having to pay the cost for archetyping, which is just another way of being cheesy. So that's why I don't like free archetype anymore. I used to be really pro archetype, free archetype. Now I'm anti free archetype. So, because I think you should. I think you should be giving up sacrifices. So I used to be pro free archetype. Now I'm anti free archetype. I think it's because people want to have their cake and eat it too. A lot of classes. The game came out in 2019. Old. It's right? Yeah. Came out in Gen Con 2019. So it's been around for a long time, and the way you sell classes or sell books is make new classes. That's what people want. Anyways, all right, folks, my battery is at 2%, so I'm going to wrap it up. We're also just past the 2-hour mark. I've got dinner in 25 or 35 minutes, so I will see you guys tomorrow because I'm probably not going to go buy a laptop just so I can play EverQuest. Maybe. But like I said, tomorrow. After tonight, I will probably be mostly out of money, and it'll be too hot to be at the pool, so I really don't know. And I don't have any plans tomorrow, so I really don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not saying I'm bored. I'm not bored, but I brought my book. I can read, I brought my journal. I can sketch. I can think, but, I should have brought my laptop. I'll just say that. All right, folks. I will see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace.